They threw a quiet man out of a hotel his own family owned. The floor manager looked at his plain clothes, decided he did not belong, and had security walk him into the street. He did not shout. He did not argue. He only turned at the door and said 6 words she would replay for the rest of her life. "Tomorrow, you will know my name." She laughed. By the next evening, she was not laughing, and the woman who had stayed silent at the front desk, the only one who followed him outside to say this was wrong, she had no idea that one small act of decency was about to change the entire shape of her life. This is a story about Lagos, about money, about the things people wear and the things they hide underneath. Before we begin, if stories about dignity, karma, and the truth, catching up to the proud means something to you, tap subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments which city you are watching from. Now, let me take you to the Okafor Grand. The Okafor Grand stood on Amadou Bello Way in Victoria Island, where the land was so expensive that people measured it the way other people measure gold. 28 floors of glass that turned orange at sunset and silver at noon. From the top suites, you could see the lagoon on one side and the open Atlantic on the other, and on a clear morning the water went on. So far it stopped looking like water and started looking like the edge of the world. It was a Tuesday in July. The rains had come early that year. The sky over Lagos had the low gray weight it gets before a real downpour, and the air smelled of wet concrete and diesel, and faintly of the white lilies they kept fresh in the lobby every single day of the year. Because the old man who built the place had believed a guest should smell flowers before they saw a face. That old man was Chief Okafor. He had died 11 months earlier. His son was about to walk through the front door, and almost nobody in the building had ever seen that son's face. His name was Tunde. He came up Amadou Bello on foot, which was the first strange thing, because nobody who mattered in that part of the city arrived on foot. The Range Rovers and the black G-Wagons pulled up under the portico one after another, and the valets ran to them, and the doormen stood with their backs straight as broomsticks. Tunde walked past all of it in a plain white shirt, gone soft from too many washes, dark trousers, and brown leather shoes that had been good shoes once, and were now just comfortable ones. He carried no bag. He had flown in from London the night before, slept 4 hours in a serviced apartment in Ikoyi, and walked out that morning without telling a single person at the company he was coming. He wanted to see the place the way a stranger sees it. His father had taught him that. You never learn the truth about your own house from inside the family. You learn it by being a guest in it and seeing how the guests are treated. People noticed him the moment he reached the steps. A woman in a yellow Ankara gown leaned toward her husband and said something behind her hand. 2 young men in slim suits, the kind who work in the banks on the same street and come to be seen, looked him up and down and shared a small private smile. A doorman in a green uniform with gold buttons watched him approach and did not open the door. Tunde reached for it himself. Inside, the lobby was full of soft money sounds. The click of expensive heels on marble, the low electronic chime of the lifts, a piano in the far corner, played live, a slow thing that nobody was really listening to. Staff in crisp uniforms moved between the columns with that particular speed that looks calm from a distance and is not calm at all up close. Behind the long front desk, 3 receptionists worked the morning check-ins. One of them was a young woman named Zara. She was 24. She had been at the Okafor Grand for 6 months, and she still felt, most mornings, like she was borrowing the uniform from someone who actually deserved it. She had grown up in Surulere, the daughter of a woman who cleaned other people's houses on the mainland, and came home with her feet so swollen she would sit at the edge of the bed and press her thumbs into the soles for an hour before she could sleep. Zara had watched her mother be spoken to like furniture in 100 rooms her mother had made spotless. She had promised herself, somewhere around the age of 14, that whatever she became, she would never become a person who looked through another person as if they were glass. She noticed Tunde because almost everyone in the lobby noticed Tunde, but she noticed him differently. The others were doing the math of his clothes. She was watching the way he moved, which was the way her father had moved before her father died, like a man who had nothing to prove and had stopped trying to prove it a long time ago. He went toward the restaurant. The lagoon room opened off the main lobby through a wide archway, no door, just a threshold and a podium. It was the kind of restaurant where the breakfast alone cost more than a junior teller at the bank downstairs earned in a day, and where the tables by the window were given out the way honors are given out, carefully, to the right people. White cloths, heavy silver, a view of the gray lagoon through floor to ceiling glass. Toon walked in, chose an empty table near that glass, pulled out the chair, and sat down. 2 minutes passed, then three. Servers crossed back and forth, water jugs sweating in their hands, balancing plates of eggs and smoked fish and warm ajij bread, smiling at the tables they had decided were worth a smile. None of them came to his. Here is a small thing that most people who have never been on the wrong side of it do not understand. The cruelty in a room like that is almost never loud. Nobody comes and tells you to leave. What happens instead is that you become weather. You sit, and the room flows around you, and a server's eyes pass over your table, the way eyes pass over an empty chair, and you wait, and you tell yourself it has only been a few minutes, and you straighten the napkin that nobody set in front of you, and you wait some more. And slowly a thing happens in your chest that is worse than any insult, which is the slow understanding that you have been seen, fully seen, and filed under not for us, and that the silence is not an oversight, but the whole message. Tund sat in that silence and let it land. He had been rich a long time. He had forgotten, a little, what this felt like, and now he was remembering, and the remembering had a strange clean burn to it, like cold water on a hand gone numb. His father had felt this every day of his early life. His father had built a hotel partly so that no one would feel it under his name. And here it was, alive and well, in the gold room with the lilies. A server, a young woman, finally slowed near his table. She looked at him, and he watched the calculation move across her face. Fast, the same arithmetic the whole lobby had done at the door, and he watched her decide. She did not stop. She refilled the water at the table beside his, smiled at the couple there, and moved on, and Tunda understood that she had not been cruel exactly, only afraid, only doing what she had learned the room wanted from her. That was the part that would stay with him, not the manager. The manager was a symptom. The thing that stayed with him was how many ordinary, frightened, decent enough people it takes, each one just following the temperature of the room, to leave one man sitting alone at a table for 10 minutes with no water. Then a different sound. Heels, fast and certain, across the marble. Tap, tap, tap. Her name was Amara. She was the floor manager of the lagoon room, and she had been the floor manager for 3 years. And in those 3 years, she had built the place into something her superiors mentioned by name in meetings. She was 34, sharp at every edge, hair pulled back so tightly it looked like a decision. She carried a slim leather folder against her chest like a shield. She had come up the hard way herself, from a one-room flat in Mushin with 6 people in it, and somewhere along that climb she had decided that the way you keep the bad old life from reaching back up and grabbing your ankle is to draw a hard, bright line between the people who belong and the people who do not, and to stand on the right side of it, and to never ever let the line blur. She had seen Toon from across the room. She had been watching him, in fact, the way you watch a smudge on a clean window. She stopped at the edge of his table. "Good morning." Her tone was not a greeting. It was a temperature. Toon looked up. "Good morning. Are you a registered guest of the hotel?" "No." "Do you have a reservation for the restaurant?" "No. I came in to eat." Amara let her eyes travel down him, slow, deliberate, so he would feel it. The washed soft collar, the comfortable shoes, then back up his face. Sir, the Lagoon Room is a private restaurant. We seat walk-ins based on availability. She paused, just long enough for the next word to carry its full weight. And suitability. Tunde did not move. I'm suitable. A small silence. Then Amara smiled, and it was a beautiful smile, and there was nothing warm anywhere inside it. I think you might be more comfortable somewhere else. There's a very good buka, 2 streets over. Local food. More your speed. You think I can't pay? She didn't deny it. She tilted her head a fraction, the way a teacher tilts her head at a slow child. I think there are options in the area better suited to your budget, Oga. The word Oga came out polished and poisonous, a title that should mean respect, sharpened into the exact opposite. Better suited to people who look like me, Tunde said. His voice had not gone up at all. It had gone quieter, which was worse. The table next to them had stopped its conversation. A man in a navy suit, a banker by the cut of him, was no longer pretending to read his phone. A woman 2 tables down had set down her cup of tea and was watching with her mouth slightly open. That is not what I said, Amara said. It's what you meant. The smile went out of her face like a candle pinched between 2 fingers. She turned her head toward the archway, where 2 security men in dark suits stood near the podium, and she lifted her chin at them. They came at once, the way men come when a person who is used to being obeyed calls them. Please walk this gentleman out, she said. Tundi stood up. He did it slowly, and without anger, and he looked at Amara for a long moment, a steady, level look, the kind of look a person carries home and cannot put down. You're doing this because of what I'm wearing. I'm doing this because you have no reservation, Amara said. Then she added it because she could not help herself, because 3 years of standing on the right side of the line had built it up in her like water behind a wall, and the wall had a crack in it, and the word came through the crack. And because this is not the place for people like you. Something moved behind Tunde's eyes, fast, a door opening and shutting in the same half second. He did not let it reach his mouth. All right, he said. The 2 men did not touch him at first. He walked between them on his own, across the marble, past the front desk toward the tall revolving doors. The whole lobby watched. Some people looked at their plates. The banker in the navy suit shook his head slowly, to himself, at no one. The woman with the tea picked her cup back up and found she did not want it anymore. At the desk, Zara watched it happen with her hand frozen on a key card she was supposed to be giving to a guest. She watched the security men flank him. She watched the polite, terrible smile come back onto Amara's face once the trouble was leaving the room. Something pulled tight in Zara's chest, the specific feeling of watching a thing that is wrong and being too small in the room to stop it. She almost spoke. The guest in front of her cleared his throat for the key card. The moment closed. At the revolving door, Tunda stopped. He turned. He found Amara across the lobby, still standing at the edge of the table she had cleared of him, and he held her eyes. Tomorrow, he said. You will know my name. He said it without heat, the way you'd state the time. Then he pushed through the door and was gone into the gray morning, and the door turned a few times behind him with nobody in it. Amara laughed, a short, real laugh, surprised out of her. She turned to one of her servers, a young man frozen nearby, and she said, You hear these big threats? Every one of them is a king somewhere. She straightened her folder against her chest. Get the table reset. We have a reservation for it at 8:30. She believed she had handled it correctly. She had kept the room clean. That was the job. That was the standard. She said the word to herself, sometimes the way some people touch a charm in their pocket. The standard. She did not think about him again for the rest of the day. She should have. Outside, the first fat drops of rain had begun to fall, slapping the pavement, darkening Tunde's shirt at the shoulders. He stood under the edge of the portico for a moment and looked up at the building. His building, 28 floors of his father's life, with his family's name carved into the granite above the doors in letters as tall as a child. He read the name the way you'd read it for the first time. Okafor. He took out his phone. He did not call a lawyer. He did not call the board. He stood in the rain and looked at the name and felt, underneath the anger, something sadder and older, the thing his father had warned him about, and he had not fully believed until this morning. A house can have your name on the front and not have your heart anywhere inside it. Excuse me. He turned. Zara had come out into the rain. Her lanyard was still around her neck, her staff badge knocking against her chest, and she was already getting wet because she hadn't stopped to think about an umbrella, hadn't stopped to think about anything, had just slipped out by the desk the moment the next guest stepped away. She looked frightened, the specific fright of a person who has done a thing they cannot now undo.
I'm sorry.
She said.
What happened in there? That was wrong.
I needed to say it. I'm sorry. Tunde looked at her. Rain in her hair, the hotel name stitched in gold thread on her chest, Okafor Grand, the same name carved above the door behind her, and she had no idea, none, that the man she was apologizing to wore it on his birth certificate. You work here, he said. Yes, she didn't look away. That doesn't mean I agreed with it. It wasn't your fault. Still felt like it was. He studied her for a second. There was something in her face he had been looking for all morning and had not found anywhere inside that beautiful freezing lobby. Not pity. Not the performance of kindness people put on when they sense it might be rewarded. Just plain discomfort at having stood in a room where something cruel happened. What's your name? He asked.
Zara.
Go back inside, Zara. You're getting soaked. He turned and walked off into the rain, and she stood under the edge of the portico and watched him until he reached the corner, and a black car she had not noticed before pulled out from the side street and stopped for him, and a driver got out and opened the rear door, and the man in the soft white shirt got in, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Zara went back to her desk. Her uniform dried in patches. She'd not tell anyone what she had seen. That night, Amara sat in her small office off the back of the kitchen, going over the evening's covers with a glass of red wine and the soft roar of the air handler in the ceiling. She was pleased. The numbers were good. The room had run clean. She thought about the man in the white shirt once and smiled to herself and decided he was a story she would tell at the staff Christmas party. The day a beggar promised me I'd know his name. She closed the laptop. She was not thinking about him anymore. The next morning came in hard and cold for Lagos, the rain still going, the gutters along Amadou Bello running brown and fast. The Okafor Grand woke up early, the way it always did. Floors mopped to a shine, stations prepped, the good coffee, the imported coffee, brewing in the staff kitchen for the front-of-house briefing. At 7 sharp, the senior operations director called an all-staff meeting in the main conference room on the second floor. His name was Daily Balabagun, a heavy, careful man in his 50s who had worked for Chief Okafor for 22 years and had wept privately in this same building the day the old man died. He stood at the head of the long table with a single sheet of paper in his hand and waited for the room to fill and go quiet. We have an ownership visit today, he said. The room shifted. Ownership visits were rare, and they were always bad, in the way that a school inspection is always bad even for the good students. The new chairman of Okafor Holdings is coming in. Unannounced walkthrough, every department. I want everything tight. Who is it, sir? One of the kitchen managers asked. Chief's son? The one from London? Nobody has ever even seen him. Dia looked down at his sheet, though he did not need to. He had read the name 100 times since the email came in at 5 that morning, and each time it had landed in his stomach a little harder. Tund Okafor, he said. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. The name went around the room like a slow electric current, and then the room came apart into quiet, controlled panic. Stations double-checked. Collars straightened. Somebody knocked over a tray of water glasses near the door, and 3 people lunged to catch them. Amara stood near the middle of the room, with her leather folder held flat against her chest, and her face was doing something complicated and very still. Okafor. She knew the name. Of course she knew the name. It was carved above the door. She walked under every single day. It was on her payslip. It was the reason the lilies were fresh. She had simply never, in 3 years, had any cause to connect that name carved in granite to an actual living man who might one day walk in off the street. A washed white shirt, comfortable brown shoes. Tomorrow you will know my name. Amara's hands had gone cold. She told herself it could not be. She told herself there were 1,000 men in Lagos who could throw out a line like that. She told herself the math did not work. The man had walked in on foot, in the rain, with no driver, no bag, no ring, no watch, nothing. A man like that is not the chairman of anything. She told herself this, and underneath it, in the part of a person that already knows the truth before the rest catches up, she felt the floor of her life tilt very slightly, the way the deck of a boat tilts before you have consciously felt the wave. At 8:47, a black car pulled up under the portico. Not a flashy car, a clean, dark, serious car. The driver came around and opened the rear door, and a man stepped out onto the wet red pavement in a charcoal suit, no tie, an old steel watch on his wrist that the head doorman, a man who had been opening that door for 30 years, recognized on sight because Chief Okafor had worn the exact same watch every day of his life and had clearly given it to his son. Same face, same calm eyes, completely different morning. The doors were already open. Deal was there, slightly breathless, his hand out. Mr. Okafor, welcome home, sir. Thank you, Deal. Toon shook the hand. He remembered the name from 20 years of his father's phone calls. My father trusted you. He told me that more than once. Deal's eyes went bright and wet for just a second, and he looked down and cleared his throat and recovered. He was a great man, sir. He was a hard man, Tunda said, not unkindly, but he was right about most things. He looked around the lobby slowly, taking all of it in, the marble, the columns, the lilies, the piano in the corner already playing its slow morning song. He breathed in. It still smells the way he wanted it to smell, he said, almost to himself. He walked into the lobby, unhurried, and the staff who had arranged themselves in a loose, terrified line tracked him with their eyes without moving their heads. At the desk, Zara stood very straight. When Tunde's gaze crossed the front desk, it stopped on her for half a second, and the smallest thing happened at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, just the memory of one, and then it moved on. Her heart was going so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had told no one. She had carried it alone for a day and a night, the impossible secret, and now here it was, walking across the marble in a charcoal suit, and she understood that she had been the only person in the entire building who already knew his name. Tunda reached the wide archway of the lagoon room and stopped. Amara was standing about 20 feet inside it, near the podium, her leather folder against her chest. She saw him. The folder slipped out of her fingers and hit the marble with a flat slap, papers fanning out across the floor. Nobody moved to pick them up. She did not move at all. She stood there, and her face went through 5 distinct things in about 2 seconds, the way a sky fence changes through a fast recognition, confusion, as her mind tried one last desperate time to make it not be him. Understanding is that. Failed. Dread. And then, last, something that looked like the floor opening underneath her feet. Tund walked toward her. The lobby behind him had gone quiet, and it was not the ordinary quiet of a working hotel. It was the held breath quiet of people who can feel that something is about to happen and do not want to miss it. He stopped in front of her. Good morning, he said. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. He tilted his head very slightly. I believe you told me yesterday that I was not suitable for this place. Her eyes dropped to the marble, to her own scattered papers. Look at me, he said. Not loud, not cruel, just direct. Please, she looked up. There were people gathering now in a loose half-circle, delay, 3 servers, 2 desk agents, a kitchen manager in his whites, all of them watching, none of them breathing. Do you want to explain to your colleagues what happened in this room yesterday morning? Tunde said, or would you prefer that I do it? The silence stretched until it had its own weight. I made a mistake, Amara said. Her voice was barely there. You made a judgment, Tunde said. You looked at my clothes and you decided what I was worth. And when I named it out loud, when I said you were doing it because of how I looked, you had two men walk me out of my own building. Sir, ah, ah. She stopped. There was nowhere for the sentence to go. Did you do that to me specifically, he asked. Or is that simply how anyone is treated here who walks in without the right shoes? No answer. He waited. He was good at waiting. It was the most frightening thing about him. I don't know, she said finally. And somehow that was worse than any lie because it was true, and she had heard it leave her own mouth, and she did not like the shape of the person it described. Tunde turned to the gathered staff. When he spoke now, it was to all of them, and his voice carried without rising. My father built this place 40 years ago. He came from a village outside Onitsha with nothing. Nothing. He carried cement on a construction site in this city before he ever owned a brick of it. And the one thing he told me, more times than I can count, was this: whoever walks through that door, you treat them the same. I do not care what they are wearing. I do not care what car they came in, or whether they came in a car at all, or whether they walked here through the rain. The moment you start sorting human beings at the door, you have already lost the thing that makes a place worth building. Nobody spoke. The piano had stopped between songs, and nobody had told it to start again. He looked back at Amara. You've run this floor for 3 years. Yes, sir. And by every report on Deal's desk, you've run it well. The covers are up. The reviews are strong. You are good at this job. He let that sit so she would understand he was not pretending she was nothing. And in being good at it, you took the part of someone's morning that should have been the best part: a warm room, a good meal, a moment of being welcome, and you turned it into the worst part of mine. Yesterday, while I sat at that table and waited for a single one of you to bring me a glass of water. A tear moved down Amara's cheek. She did not wipe it. She seemed not even to know it was there. Here is what is going to happen, Tunde said. I am removing you from floor management. Effective today. You will be reassigned to back-of-house operations, inventory, stores, kitchen support. You will not be on this floor. Mr. Okafor Euros, I am not firing you, he said, and there was something almost gentle in it now, which was somehow harder to bear than the rest. Listen to me. I am not firing you. Yesterday, when I was the man at the table, nobody in this room gave me a second chance. I am giving you one. Do something with it that I was not given the chance to do. Amara stood with her mouth pressed into a thin line and her chin trembling and her papers all over the floor. She nodded. Once, slowly. Then she crouched, gathered the scattered sheets with shaking hands, stood, turned, and walked toward the back of the house without looking at a single person in that half circle. The room let out a long breath it had been holding. Later that morning, in the small operations office behind the front desk, Dealey said the thing out loud that had been sitting on him since the lobby. Sir, I have to ask, you're keeping her on. After that, most owners would have walked her to the gate with a security escort and a final paycheck. Tunde was looking out the window at the rain. Would they? And they'd have been within their rights. Deal was a careful man, and careful men know the law because the law is what protects careful men. Gross misconduct, you could argue, but it's cleaner the way you did it. If we dismissed her on the spot for a judgment call, no theft, no proven misconduct, just a bad attitude toward a man she didn't know was the owner, she could take us to the National Industrial Court, and she might even win. Unfair dismissal, wrongful termination. Your father used to say the labor law in this country has teeth, and the teeth all point at the employer. He almost smiled. He paid 2 settlements in 20 years and complained about both for a decade. I remember. Tunde turned from the window. But that's not why I kept her, Deal. I want to be clear about that, with you at least. I didn't keep her because a lawyer told me to. I kept her because firing someone for being cruel to me on the morning I have all the power and she has none would have made me exactly the thing I just stood in that lobby and condemned. It would have been the same move she made. Decide a person's whole worth in 3 seconds and erase them for it. The only difference is I'd have been right about her, and she was wrong about me, and being right is not enough. My father taught me that too. He picked up a folder from the desk and didn't open it. Document everything, though. Every conversation, the demotion, the reasoning, the date and time. Put it in her file today, not next week. If a person feels erased, they don't always go quietly, and I want a clean record of every fair thing we did, in case we ever have to prove we did them. Deal looked at him for a moment, and there was something in the look that was almost grief, because it was the exact thing the old chief would have said, in almost the exact words, and the old chief had been in the ground 11 months. I'll have it in her file by noon, he said. He did not know yet how much that record would matter. Neither did Tunde. They were being careful for a reason they could not name, the way you check a knot twice on a calm day because the sea has a feel to it you don't like. Then Tunde turned toward the front desk. Zara, she straightened so fast she nearly knocked over the brushstand. Sir, you came out into the rain yesterday. Yes, sir. Why? She hesitated. Everyone was looking at her now, and she was 24, and her mother cleaned houses in Surulere, and she had been at this job 6 months. But she had decided a long time ago what kind of person she was going to be, and the decision had cost her something every time, and it was about to cost her again, and she made it again anyway. Because what happened was wrong, she said, and I didn't want the last thing you remembered about this place to be that. Tunde looked at her for a long moment. How long have you been here? 6 months, sir. In 6 months, he said, you understood something that took a 3-year manager 3 years to get wrong. He glanced at Dealey, then back at Zara. I want you shadowing Dealey for the next 30 days. Full operations, every department. Front desk, housekeeping, kitchen, events, security, the books. You watch how all of it actually works. Zara's lips parted. Sir, I don't Euro. If what I saw yesterday is real, Tunde said, and I think it is, you'll be ready for a great deal more after that. We'll talk in 30 days. He nodded to her, nodded to Deal, and walked toward the lifts, and the doors opened for him as if the building itself had been waiting all night for him to come home. 3 weeks passed. The hotel changed in those 3 weeks, but not the way a hotel changes when it gets new carpet or a new menu. It changed the way a room changes when somebody finally fixes the one light that had been flickering. For so long you'd stopped noticing it was broken. Quiet. Real. You only saw it if you'd seen the before. The smiles were different. Not the trained, switched-on smile of people performing welcome, but the other kind, the kind that reaches the eyes. A woman from Abuja wrote a review online that the staff had read aloud at a briefing. She said she had stayed in 40 hotels in 2 years for her work, and the Okafor Grand was the only one where she'd felt like a person instead of a transaction. Deal had it printed and pinned to the staff notice board. Zara shadowed him through all of it, and she was good. Better than good. She had the thing you cannot teach, which is the ability to walk into a room and feel, within 10 seconds, what is actually wrong in it, who is overwhelmed and hiding it, which guest is about to complain and why, where the small fire is before it becomes a big one. Deal watched her work and thought, more than once, of the old chief who had had exactly the same gift and had built an empire on it. And Amara worked in the back. She did not complain. She did not make excuses, did not corner colleagues in the corridor to tell her side, did not do any of the things a humiliated person usually does. She came in early, and she did the work, inventory counts, and stores requisitions, and the long, boring spreadsheets of a kitchen's supply chain. And some mornings, Zara would catch sight of her through the kitchen pass, head down, focused, working without the audience she used to need. Something seemed to be shifting in her, or maybe it had always been there, buried under all. All those years of needing to prove she deserved to stand in rooms she'd taught herself were too good for the girl from Mushin. Zara didn't know which it was. Neither did Amara. Here is what the back of the house is, if you have never worked in one. It is the body of the building, with its skin off. It is the loading bay, and the dry stores, and the chemical cupboard, and the long fluorescent corridor where the bins go, and it has no windows, and nobody important ever walks through it, and the staff who live in it become, over time, a little invisible, even to themselves. Amara had spent 3 years on the other side of the swing doors, in the part of the building that was lit for guests, where the lilies were and the piano was, and the light came off the lagoon, and now she spent her days in the part that was lit for machines. She counted napkins. She signed for deliveries of cooking oil at 6 in the morning, from men who did not look at her twice. She ate her lunch standing up next to the ice machine because there was nowhere in the back that anyone had ever bothered to make pleasant to sit. And the thing that ate at her was not any of that, exactly. She could have borne the work. What she could not bear was a single image that played in her mind on a loop every hour, sometimes every few minutes, which was the image of the lagoon room at the dinner rush, full and gold and humming, and someone else standing at the head of it where she used to stand. The room running without her, the room not missing her at all. She had believed for 3 years that she was the room, that her standing there was what made it what it was, and the unbearable discovery of the back of the house was that the room did not need her, had perhaps never needed her, was getting along, by every report, better than fine. That is the wound. Not poverty, not even shame, exactly. It is the discovery that the place you bled to belong to can close over the space where you stood like water, closing over a dropped stone, and leave no mark at all. A stronger person, or maybe just a luckier one, takes that wound and lets it teach them something true and hard about how little of our worth is really tied up in a title. Amara was not, in that season of her life, a strong or a lucky person. She took the wound and she let it become a plan. But something else was shifting too, and it was uglier, and it was further along than anyone could see. Because being good at a thing, and then being told you may no longer do it in front of everyone you ever trained, does something to a certain kind of person. It is not the loss of the salary that breaks them, the loss of was barely touched. It is the loss of the place, the standing, the being seen. Amara had spent her whole adult life climbing out of a one-room flat in Mushin toward a single destination, which was a room where people deferred to her, and she had reached it, and she had stood in it for 3 years, and then in the space of one morning she had been walked to the back of the house and made invisible, and some part of her could not, would not accept it. She started spending time with a man named Musa. Musa had been at the Okafor Grand for 6 years, maintenance and building systems. He knew every wire and pipe and access door in the place, knew the building better than the people who owned it. He also knew how to stay off everybody's radar, which is its own kind of skill. He was quiet, careful, a little bitter himself, a man who had kept the whole place running for 6 years and had never once been mentioned in a single one of the meetings where they handed out praise. Amara found him in the staff break room one night near 11 when the late shift was thin and the building was running on its skeleton. "I need a favor," she said. Musa looked at her over the rim of a paper cup of tea. "You're back of house now. For now." He waited. "I need something to go wrong," she said, keeping her voice low and even. "Not dangerous, not illegal, nothing that hurts anybody, just wrong. And I need it to look like it happened because a certain person didn't do their job properly." Musa set the cup down, slow. "A certain person like who?" She said the name. He was quiet for a while. He was not a stupid man, and a small, clear voice in the back of his mind was telling him exactly where this road went and exactly who would be standing in the wreckage at the end of it. And the voice was not wrong, and he did not listen to it. 6 years of being invisible has a sound, and it sounds a lot like yes. He nodded. "It started on a Thursday." The Okafor Grand was hosting a private dinner in the Lagoon Room. 60 covers, an oil and gas firm out of Port Harcourt, closing a partnership with a logistics group from Dubai. The kind of deal where the contracts are worth more than the building they're signed in. The reservation had been confirmed 3 times. The menu had been customized down to the last detail. The table layout had been signed off by the client's own people. Zara had overseen every piece of it personally. This was her event. The first one, Delay, had handed her start to finish, and she had checked the kitchen twice that morning, confirmed the dietary requirements, walked the dining room at 4 in the afternoon and again at 6. She was wearing a black dress instead of the front desk uniform, and she felt, walking that room, the closest thing to belonging she had felt in her whole life. The lead guest was the managing director of the Port Harcourt firm, a sharp, elegant woman in her 50s named Mrs. Ease. And in her reservation file, confirmed 3 separate times, flagged in red, was a single line that mattered more than anything else in the building that night. Severe shellfish allergy. Anaphylaxis risk. No shellfish, no cross-contamination, no exceptions. At 7:30, the first course went out. It went out wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. The plate set down in front of Mrs. Ease was a delicate thing, beautifully arranged, folded into the center of it. Glazed and pink and unmistakable were 3 prawns. She caught it before she touched it. 50 years of living with a thing that can kill you teaches you to read a plate the way other people read a face. She went still. She lifted her eyes, and across the table the whole conversation died, because everyone at that table also knew about the allergy, and they were watching her watch the plate. Zara was at the side of the room. She saw Mrs. Ease go still. She crossed the floor in a way that looked calm and was not, and she reached the table and saw the prawns and felt the blood go out of her face. "Ma, I am so sorry," she said, already lifting the plate away. "Please don't eat anything. I'll fix this right now. Let me take this." "I confirmed this reservation 3 times." Mrs. Easy's voice was very controlled. Her hands, flat on the white cloth, were not. "3 times, young lady. That is not a mistake. That is a question of whether anyone in this kitchen can be trusted with a human life." "You're right, Ma. You're completely right. Give me 2 minutes." The table had gone silent. Across the room, the Dubai delegation was watching, murmuring. A deal of that size runs partly on a feeling, the feeling that you are dealing with people who do not make catastrophic errors, and that feeling was draining out of the room like water out of a cracked tank. Zara went into the kitchen. She did not shout. She found the ticket for table 1 and read it. It said, in clear black print, no shellfish, prawns substituted, vegetable terrine, allergy flag. The ticket was correct. She found the line cook who had plated it, a young man named Femi, sweating in the heat of the pass. "Femi, table 1, the MD. Talk to me." He held up a ticket in his hand, his own copy, and his face was a picture of honest confusion. "I plated what the ticket said, Zara. I swear to God." And the ticket in his hand said, in clear black print, Prawn Starter, Table 1. 2 tickets. Same table number, different dishes. Somebody had printed a second ticket. Zara did not have time in that moment to understand how. But the cold part of her mind, the part that had already been trained by 6 months of watching how this building actually worked, registered exactly how bad this was, in a way the rest of the room did not yet grasp. This was not a kitchen sending out a wrong plate. This was a documented, flagged, life-threatening allergy that had been confirmed 3 separate times in writing. And there were rules about this. Real rules, the kind the head chef drilled into every new hire on their first day. The kitchen ran on a food safety system, the same one every serious kitchen in the world runs on, where an allergy of that severity is a controlled hazard, treated like a live wire. Separate prep area, separate boards, a named person who carries it from the reservation file to the pass and confirms it by hand. A flagged allergy does not reach a plate by accident. The system is built, layer on layer, precisely so that it cannot. For shellfish protein to land in front of a guest with anaphylaxis on her file, every one of those layers had to have been not just missed but defeated by someone who knew where each layer was and how to step around it. And 3 prawns on that plate was not a near miss in the way a cold soup is a near miss. Mrs. Ease had a documented anaphylaxis risk, which is a different and far more frightening thing than an upset stomach. It is the body's defense system turning in minutes against the body itself, the throat closing, the blood pressure falling off a cliff. People die of it at dinner tables. They die in good restaurants with good staff. The only thing that had stood between this evening and an ambulance, or worse, was the fact that a 50-year-old woman who had lived her whole life with the thing had learned, long ago, to read a plate before she read a menu. The kitchen had not saved her. Her own lifetime of vigilance had. Zara moved. She got the correct tureen plated and carried it out herself, set it down with both hands, apologized again, apologized to the whole table, apologized in the specific, exact, unhysterical way that is the only kind of apology powerful people respect. She kept the evening from collapsing entirely. By the time the dessert went out, the conversation had limped back to life, but Mrs. Ease left without signing. The Dubai group left polite and cool. The deal did not die that night, but it did not close either, and a deal that does not close on the night it was supposed to is a wounded thing that very often does not survive. Tund called Zara up to his office at 11:30. The room was high and quiet and almost empty. A desk, 2 chairs, a wall of glass with the city scattered out below it in a million orange lights and the dark band of the lagoon beyond. He was standing at the window with his back to her when she came in. "Tell me what happened," he said. "All of it. Don't manage me." So she told him. The ticket on the rail that was correct. The ticket in Femi's hand that was not. 2 tickets, one table, printed minutes apart. The discrepancy she could not yet explain. He turned around. He was not angry. That was the thing she would remember. He was thinking, "Did you personally check the reservation system this morning?" "Yes, sir." The allergy flag was there. Red. I checked it twice. "And the kitchen had the right ticket on the rail." "Yes." "So between the right ticket on the rail," he said slowly, "and the wrong plate on the table, a second ticket appeared, printed, from the system." "Yes, sir." He looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," he said. She waited for more. There wasn't any. "Go home, Zara. Come back tomorrow." She left. In the lift down, she watched her own hands and saw that they were shaking. In the lobby, nearly empty now, she passed Amara, who was finishing a late stores count, walking toward the service exit with a clipboard under her arm and her head down. For half a second their eyes met. Amara looked away first. Zara stood in the empty lobby after the service door had swung shut, and a small cold thought arrived in her mind, fully formed, and she did not want it, and she could not make it leave. A second ticket, printed from the system, by someone who knew the system, by someone who had stood at the head of that exact room for 3 years and knew exactly where the knife would go in deepest. She told herself she had no proof. She told herself it was an ugly thought, and she was better than ugly thoughts. She told herself this, and she did not believe it, and she went home. The second thing happened 5 days later, and it was worse, because the first thing had only cost money, and this one was built to cost a person their freedom. A guest on the 14th floor reported a piece of jewelry missing from her room. A bracelet. Gold, with a single emerald set in the clasp, valued at close to 4,750,000 naira. The guest was not nobody. Her husband sat on the Lagos State House of Assembly. Within an hour, what had started as a room complaint had become a sentence that nobody in hotel management ever wants to hear out loud. "We are considering involving the police." Zara was on floor management that week. The 14th floor fell under her oversight, which meant that when the question got asked, "Who is responsible for that floor?" the answer was her name's, but she felt the trap before she could see all of it. She just knew, standing in the security office, watching the head of security pull up the timeline, that the shape of this was familiar, that she had felt this exact cold thing 5 days ago in a kitchen looking at two tickets, and that whoever had printed the second ticket had now reached up one more floor. Tunde brought in an outside security consultant, a former police investigator named Mr. Coker, a tired, thorough man who did not care about anyone's feelings and was therefore exactly the right man for the job. He pulled the CCTV for the 14th floor corridor for the turn down window, the slot in the early evening when housekeeping enters the rooms to prepare them for the night. But Mr. Coker did not start with the camera. He started with the building's own memory, the part of it that does not blink or angle its face away. Every door in the Okafor Grand opened with a key card, and every key card left a record, a line in a log, a timestamp and a door number, and the staff ID of the card that opened it. It was the same with the kitchen terminals. Every ticket printed left a trace, which terminal, which login, which second. Mr. Coker sat in the security office for most of a day with a junior IT officer and pulled the logs the way you'd drain a wound, slowly, completely, and laid them out side by side. The second ticket, the prawn ticket, the one that had nearly killed a managing director, had been printed at 6:51 in the evening from the back of house terminal in dry stores, under a generic login that half the building used and nobody owned. Clever, nearly clean. But the same terminal had registered a second action 4 minutes earlier, a routine stores query, under a named login that was not generic at all, that belonged to exactly one person, and that person had no business standing at that terminal on the evening of a private dinner she had been removed from any responsibility for weeks before. And the key card log for the 14th floor told the same kind of quiet, damning story. A housekeeping MasterCard had opened the door of the guest's room at 8:12 on Thursday evening, inside the turn-down window, and the MasterCard had been signed out that afternoon, by hand, in a ledger, by the same named person, who again had no reason in the world to be holding a 14th floor master key while assigned to count boxes in the stores. Only then did Mr. Coker turn to the camera, because by then he already knew what he was looking for and only needed the picture to put a body to the logs. The footage was not good. The corridor camera was old, the resolution soft, the light low, but it showed a figure, a woman, entering the guest's room during the turn-down window, her face angled down and away from the lens, deliberately, the way a person angles their face when they know exactly where a camera is and have known for years. Mr. Coker zoomed in anyway, frame by frame, patient as a man defusing a bomb, and there on the woman's left wrist, half caught in the bad light, was a bracelet, a thin chain, a small charm hanging from it. He pushed the enhancement as far as it would go, and the charm resolved, barely, into a shape. A star, a small silver star. Zara was standing behind Mr. Coker's chair when the star came clear on the screen, and her stomach dropped through the floor, because she had seen that bracelet. She knew that bracelet. She had seen it 100 times on a wrist that used to hold a leather folders against a chest at the head of the lagoon room. She turned, slowly, toward the open door of the security office. Amara was standing just outside it. She had come up, ostensibly, to deliver a stores report. She was watching the screen over their shoulders. Her left hand was behind her back. For a long moment, the two women looked at each other, and neither of them said a single word, and both of them understood completely. The meeting happened the next morning, in the same second-floor conference room where DLA had Tunde's visit 3 weeks before. Not the full staff this time, just the core of it.
Coker.
DLA.
Mr. Coker. Zara.
And Amara. Tunde sat at the head of the long table. He did not open with a speech. He placed a single sheet of paper in the center of the table, face up, a printed still from the CCTV, the zoomed frame, the wrist, the star. Beside it, he laid two more sheets, the terminal log and the key card ledger, the times underlined in pen. This photograph was taken at 8:14 on Thursday evening, he said. On the 14th floor, during the turn-down window. Outside the room where a bracelet worth 4,750,000 naira went missing. He touched the second sheet. This is the door log. A MasterCard opened that room at 8:12. It was signed out by hand that afternoon. He touched the third, and this is the kitchen terminal log from the night of the E's dinner. A second ticket, the one with the prawns, printed from the dry store's terminal at 6:51. 4 minutes before it, the same terminal ran a store's query under a named login. He looked up. I'm not going to read the name on these logs out loud. I think the person it belongs to already knows it's there. Silence. He looked at Amara. She was looking at the photograph. Her jaw was set. Her hands were flat on the table, both of them, palms down, very still. The bracelet in that image, Tunde said, has a particular charm on it, a star, sterling silver, small. He paused. In all my time in this building, short as it has been, I have only seen that exact bracelet on one person. Nobody breathed. Amara, he said. She looked up. Do you want to tell me, he said, gently, terribly, what is on your left wrist right now? She did not move for 3 full seconds. The clock on the wall was suddenly very loud. Then slowly she lifted her left hand off the table and laid it flat in the middle of it, on top of the photograph, almost on top of its own image, and there it was. The thin chain, the small silver star. Zara closed her eyes. The head of security exhaled through his nose, a long, disappointed sound. Amara looked at Tunde, and her face was the face of a person who has been running for a long time and has just felt the road end under their feet. There was nowhere left to go, and they both knew it. I didn't steal it, she said. Her voice was steady, but it was thin, stretched over something about to break. I took it. I was going to put it back. That was always the plan. I was going to put it in euros. She stopped. She made herself say it. I was going to put it in Zara's locker, so that when it was found, it would be found on her side. I never wanted the money. I don't care about the money. The dinner, Tunde said. Thursday before last. The prawns. The second ticket. It was not a question. She nodded once. Yes, that was me. I printed it from a back terminal. I know the system. I built half the procedures on that system. Something flickered across her face, terrible and almost proud, and then it was gone. Dia leaned back in his chair and pressed a hand over his mouth and shut his eyes. Why? It was Zara who said it. She had not planned to speak. The word came out of her on its own, quiet, almost pleading. Why? Amara turned and looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, something in her face was not hard. Because that was supposed to be my job, she said. Her voice cracked clean in half on the word job. I built that floor. From nothing. I trained half the people sitting in this room. I came from a place you cannot imagine. A room in Mushin with 6 people and 1 window, and I clawed my way up to the front of the best dining room in Lagos. And I stood there. I belonged there. And then in one morning, I went from running that room to counting boxes of napkins in the dark where nobody can see me. She looked down at her own hand on the photograph, and then they handed my floor, my standing, the thing I bled for, to a girl who'd been here 6 months. She was crying now, without any sound, the tears just running. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't accept being made into nothing. So I decided if I had to be invisible, she would be invisible too. I wanted you to look at her the way you looked at me. I wanted you to question whether she was ever really ready. The room was completely silent. Tunde let it stay silent for a moment. He was not enjoying this. That was clear in every line of him. There are people who would have enjoyed this, and he was not one of them, and that, in the end, was the whole difference between him and her. I want to say something, he said, and I want everyone in this room to hear it, because what happens next is not only about punishment, it is about understanding why we are all sitting here. He turned the photograph face down on the table, gently, so they would stop staring at it. What Amara just described, he said, is real. It is not an excuse, and I am not going to let it become one, but it is real, and pretending it isn't would be its own kind of lie. There is a thing that happens to people, a documented thing, when their place in the world is taken from them in front of the people they led. It is not about money. She is right about that. Her salary barely moved. It is about something older and deeper than money. It is the feeling of being erased. And a certain kind of person, when they feel erased, does not curl up and disappear quietly. They reach for the one thing that will make them feel powerful again, even for one night, even if the thing they reach for is the destruction of someone who never wronged them. You felt invisible, he said. So you tried to make her invisible. You tried to put your own pain onto a person who had nothing to do with causing it. That is the oldest, saddest move a hurt human being makes, and you are far too intelligent not to have known. Somewhere, exactly what you were doing. Amara, nothing. The tears kept coming. And here is the part I need you to hear, Tunda said. The night you had me, walked out of this lobby, I had a choice. I went home and I sat with it, and I will be honest with you, I wanted to come back the next morning and take this entire building apart on top of your head. I wanted to erase you the way you'd tried to erase me. I had the power to do it before lunch. He paused. I didn't. I gave you a path. A demotion is not an ending. People come back from a demotion. People I respect have come back from worse. I gave you a road forward, and I meant it. His voice did not rise, but something hardened underneath it. You looked at that road, he said, and you chose this one instead. You sabotaged a dinner that could have cost this hotel a partnership worth more than you or I will earn in a lifetime. You stole from a guest. And you tried to frame a 24-year-old girl for a crime, to send her to a police cell, a girl whose only offense in her entire life was walking into the rain to tell a stranger she was sorry. You did all of that to a person who never did one thing to you except show up and do the job well. Amara looked up. €20, her voice broke. Mr. Okafor. Dealey said it quietly from the side. Amara, she flinched at her own name. Your employment here is terminated, Tande said, effective immediately. She had known it was coming. She still made a small sound, low in her throat, as if some part of her had right up till that second believed there would be one more reprieve, the way there had been one before. I am going to tell you the rest, and then you can go, Tande said. We will return the bracelet to the guest. I will speak to her myself and to her husband, and I will keep this out of the courts, because dragging you through a police cell will not undo a single thing you've done, and it will cost this hotel's other staff weeks of their lives in statements and stress. We will not be involving the police. He looked at her steadily. Not because you have earned that mercy. You have not. But because the people in this room who did nothing wrong have earned not having their lives turned into a court case. That is the only courtesy this situation gets, and it is not for you, it is for them. Amara stood up slowly. She did not take the bracelet off her wrist. The head of security would do that at the door, quietly, in the corridor. She picked nothing up from the table. She looked for a moment at Zara. And here is the strange thing. The thing Zara would turn over in her mind for a long time afterward. In Amara's expression in that last moment, there was no anger. There was no bitterness left. There was something that looked almost like relief, the specific, exhausted relief of a person who has been carrying a heavy and shameful thing for a long way and has finally been made to set it down. Then she turned and walked out, and the door closed behind her with a soft, final click, and for a long time nobody in that room said anything at all. 2 weeks later, the long rains broke. There came one of those Lagos evenings that arrive maybe twice a season, when the clouds finally tear open and empty themselves out, and then move on, and the air afterward is washed clean and soft and smells of wet earth even 28 floors up, and the whole bruised gray city seems, for an hour, to forgive itself. Zara was on the rooftop terrace. The Okafor Grand had one, glassed in on 3 sides, used for private events, and she had come up to check the setup for a wedding tasting the next morning. She stood at the glass wall and looked out at Lagos spread below her, the lights coming on across Victoria Island and Ikoyi, and, far off, the long, bright spine of the third mainland bridge curving over the black lagoon toward the mainland, toward Surulere, toward the one window of the one room where her mother was probably. At this exact hour, pressing her thumbs into the soles of her swollen feet. She heard the door open behind her. Tunde came in. He did not look surprised to find her there. He came and stood a few feet away and looked out at the same view, and for a while neither of them said anything, which was its own kind of comfortable. "You okay?" he said eventually. "Getting there." A pause. "You never asked me," she said, "whether I thought you made the right call." With Amara, either time. Did I? She thought about it honestly, because he had asked honestly. The first time? Yes. You gave her a chance most people wouldn't have given her. That was right. She watched a Danfo bus far below, yellow even in the dark, crawl through the standing water on Amadou Bello. The second time, you didn't have a choice. She made sure of that herself. "I know," he said. "I just keep thinking," Zara said slowly, "about who she was before any of this. She must have been good once, really good. To build that floor the way she did. She was," Tunde said. "That's what made it the saddest thing in the building." He was quiet a moment. "My father had a saying. He said, a person's character is not what they do when they are at the bottom looking up. Anyone can be decent when they're hungry and hoping. Character is what they do the day they finally have a little power and a little fear of losing it. That's the test. People fail it quietly in small ways their whole lives. Amara just failed it loudly, all at once where everyone could see. The rain had stopped completely now. Somewhere below, a generator coughed and caught. "Can I ask you something?" Zara, "Yes. Why did you really do it?" The white shirt, walking in like that. Most owners would have come in the front with a convoy and let everyone bow. He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was lower. "My father did this," he said. "Once a year, at least. He'd take off the watch and the good shoes, and he'd go and sit in his own lobbies, dressed like a man with nothing. And he'd see how he was treated. He used to say it was the only honest audit there is. You can fake the numbers. You can fake the reviews. You cannot fake the way a tired stranger in cheap clothes gets treated when nobody important is watching." He looked at the city. I'd been away in London a long time. I'd never run anything of his. I think part of me wanted to see if I could still feel it, the way he taught me to feel it, whether the building was still his, underneath the name. He almost smiled. It wasn't. Not on the ground floor, anyway. Now it's getting there. Zara nodded. She understood that better than he probably knew. "You came outside," he said. "You keep mentioning that, because it's the whole thing." He turned to look at her. "I had nothing. No watch, no car, no name they could see. You had everything to lose by following me out there. Your job, your standing, and nothing at all to gain. I was already gone. You'd never see me again, you thought." He shook his head slightly. "Most people feel the wrongness of a thing like that and do nothing anyway. They look at their feet and they wait for it to be over and they tell themselves it wasn't their place to speak. You didn't." Zara was quiet for a while. Then she said the thing she had never said to anyone in that building. "My mother cleans houses," she said. "On the mainland. She's done it since I was small, and I have stood in doorways my whole life and watched people talk to her like she was a piece of the furniture they were paying to have moved around. Nice houses, educated people. They'd step over her on the stairs like she was a wet patch on the floor. She kept her eyes on the city. She never made a scene. Not once. She'd just take it and absorb it and come home and rub her feet and never say a word about it. And I decided, I was maybe 14, I decided I was never going to be one of the people in the doorway, the ones who see it and say nothing and let it happen and go home and sleep fine. Tunde did not say anything for a moment. Then, simply, "I'm glad you weren't." The lights of the city held steady below them. A plane went over, low, dropping toward the airport, its belly lights blinking. "I want to talk to you," Tunde said, "about what comes next for you here. Your role. Okay, not tonight." He smiled again. "Tonight I just needed somewhere quiet that didn't have my father's name on every wall." Zara nodded. She understood that too. They stood there in the clean, washed dark for a while longer, not talking, two people watching a huge, difficult city settle down for the night. And whatever it was that was beginning between them, the thing that did not have a name yet and would not need one for a while, the building seemed to feel it before they did. The staff would feel it in the weeks after. The way a place feels different when the right people are finally standing in the right rooms, doing the right things for the right reasons. The Okafor Grand was 28 floors of glass and steel and granite, with one family's name carved across the top in letters as tall as a child. But the thing that made it worth anything had never once been the building. A note before I let you go. I've worked in and around the service world long enough to have seen the thing this story is really about, and it is not the dramatic part, not the secret billionaire or the bracelet on the wrist. The real thing is smaller and far more common than that. It's the way a person's whole worth gets decided at a doorway in 3 seconds by a stranger reading their shoes. It happens in hotels and banks and government offices and hospital waiting rooms all over this world, every single day, to people who will never get the satisfaction of walking back in the next morning in a different suit. The woman cleaning the floor you're standing on, the man you walked past at the gate, the quiet one in the washed shirt who came in out of the rain. You do not know what they carry or who they are. And the test of your own character was never how you treated the people you knew were important. It was always how you treated the ones you decided were not. I am not a wealthy man, and I have no grand lesson to hand you. Only a thing my own mother used to say when I was small and getting above myself, which is that the way you treat a person who can do nothing for you is the truest thing anybody will ever know about you. Amara forgot that the day she got a little power and a lot of fear. Most of us only forget it in smaller ways. But we forget it. So this week, find the person everyone else is looking through and look at them instead. Say good morning like you mean it. It costs you nothing, and you will never know, standing at that doorway, exactly whose name you're about to learn tomorrow.